Hey guys, welcome to Actualized Men. Carl here. Nice guy syndrome. I have to betray myself to be loved. So, nice guy syndrome is something that was written about by Dr. Robert Glover um, about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And this is a very modern phenomenon. Um, and before we dive into it, I'd like to just create a few definitions so that we understand what we're talking about. You know, when a lot of women, if you listen to them, they'll say, "All I want is a nice guy," right? And they'll say it with some frustration, almost like a sigh. And what they mean by a nice guy is very different than what men hear. Okay, she might mean an alpha male swinging dick multimillionaire. That's what she calls nice. Okay, but what these men are hearing when she uses the word nice is a man that is not going to make her cry, going to make her happy, going to give her everything she wants, treat her like a queen. Okay, is totally focused on her. That's what this man's hearing. So, this word nice is creating something different in men than I think most women actually intend when they use the word nice. And so, nice guys are men who had learned as a child that they have to either reject and or betray themselves to be loved. So let that just sink in for a second. And I mean that at their core essence. I mean that as men, they had to reject themselves as men and or betray themselves in order to get the love of mother. It runs pretty deep, okay, and it strikes right to the balls of a man. Now, this is something that has been manifesting itself in our modern industrial age, because really when the industrial age arrived, men were leaving the home and going to the factory. So there was this proverbial abandonment by the masculine. There was this absence of dad, okay? And the pain that caused, not only the wife, but the children, all right? There's this absence. And somewhere along the line, the little boy sees his mom upset, sees his mom unhappy, and in a split second says to himself, well, I'm not that, Mom. Look at me. I'm better than that. I'm not that guy. And that's the beginning of nice guy syndrome. In that moment, that little boy has rejected dad. He's rejected the call of manhood, the responsibilities of manhood, because it's hurting his mother. Okay, and he feels protective. And he wants to see his mother happy because, to a greater or lesser extent, that's survival. Children are wired to see their mother happy and content because their survival depends on it. Now, when you consider a creature that has gotten the message that they're on some level, they have to reject something about themselves in order to be loved, how do you think they're going to feel deep down towards their mother? These men are full of rage. However they present as being easygoing, the nicest guy you could ever hope to meet, give you the shirt off their back. They've got no boundaries. They'll work double hours for no money. They will do absolutely everything for you. And underneath it, they are seething with rage and resentment and passive aggression. They're like a volcano waiting to explode. In my view, these nice guys are actually the most dangerous form of men because they are not honest. They're deceiving themselves. They are basically presenting to women as not being sexual men, not being the proverbial swinging dick, not showing masculine instinct or acting on masculine instinct. These men are saying, hey, don't worry about me. I'm safe. I'm your friend. I'm on your side. I'm here for you, right? It's actually a manipulation. That's their sexual strategy, and they tend to orbit women and be the shoulder to cry on and the white knight and the simp and just give her everything she wants and all this kind of stuff, in the hope that in a moment of weakness, they'll be able to step in. They are still fighting the war against dad. They're actually a co-conspirator with mother against father. Right? This is how these nice guys are trying to resolve the Oedipal complex. Is they're actually throwing dad under the bus to win mother. And they take that strategy into their romantic relationships with women, and it's a train wreck. It's a train wreck. Now, especially nowadays, I see a lot of people talking about nice guy syndrome, which is good. It's bringing awareness to it. But I'm going to be completely candid with you. These issues associated with this nice guy syndrome run extremely deep. You are not going to fix this at a weekend workshop. You're not going to fix it in a coach's masterclass. That's not to say you can't make some progress, okay? But this is actually a tremendous amount of work ahead of you. If you are one of these nice guys, there's a tremendous amount of work to free yourself from this, because you are actually psychologically, emotionally, and even spiritually to a degree, you are engulfed by woman. You are engulfed by mother. And you are completely controlled by the feminine. These men are very, very invested in how people perceive them and how people think of them. They are very invested in, especially women, being happy with them. Very, very invested in that. So they are completely controlled externally, which is basically an indication that you are still controlled by mother. You're still controlled by the feminine. You haven't found your own autonomy and you're not driven by your masculine instinct. You are a people pleaser. Okay? You're controlled by other people's expectations and their feelings. These men have huge problems with other men. Okay, they tend not to have a lot of male friends because their self-deception, they risk exposure. Their self-deception comes to the surface and they risk exposure in the company of other men who won't tolerate the underlying animosity and sabotage that goes on. These men hate other men, right? They see other men as bad towards women. They see male sexuality as toxic and shameful. Okay? And their self-loathing is projected onto men. And in that way, they are a co-conspirator with women. All right? In that regard. And in doing that, that's their strategy of getting close enough to a woman in the hope of being a potential mate. So nice guy syndrome is a very modern affliction for a lot of men. Okay, and it's something that I think a lot of men actually exhibit to a greater or lesser extent, just by virtue of the way that modern society is structured right now, and the fact that so many households do not have a man present on an ongoing basis. Usually the man is either partially absent or fully absent. Okay? So what is happening is that on some very deep level, the boy, as he is growing, rejects the world of man because it creates pain not only for himself but for his mother. And so nice guy syndrome is this man who he has no boundaries, he has no real sense of self. His sense of self and self-esteem is derived from outside of himself. These men are also a little bit like Teflon. Nothing sticks to them. They are sort of invisible. They never risk offending anybody. They never risk taking a stand. They never risk the rejection and the abandonment of taking a stand, right? They want everyone to get along. They want everyone to just just cooperate and just get along. They are very conflict averse. And they also cannot handle any tension. They can't handle sexual tension at all. So they discharge the tension right away because they are invested in peace. They're invested in not peace in a good way. They are invested in making their mommy happy. Okay, to them that's peace. To them that's safety. Okay, so that's an overview of nice guy syndrome. And like I say, it's a lot of work to heal this wound, and it is a wound because it strikes at the core essence of a man and his sexuality, right? Because masculinity is independent of woman. It is not defined by woman. Masculinity is defined from inside. Us as men, we define ourselves. We march to our own drumbeat. Okay? And these men instead have rejected that journey, that fear of failure, that possibility of failure, possibility of rejection and abandonment, and instead try and stay safe by being friends with women and having the company of women as a kind of a confidant, or like I say, I've used the word co-conspirator against the men, because on some level these men have rejected themselves. But underneath that, they can't feel anything because they've repressed their rage. And their rage is pretty scary. These guys are volcanoes. And usually the volcano blows when it comes to something around shame, particularly when it comes around other men. So healing the nice guy syndrome is, like I said, it's a long journey, because you have to understand how this message that you are so bad that you have to reject yourself, you have to abandon yourself, you have to betray yourself in order to be loved. That has such far-reaching implications for that masculine creature, right? In every facet of his life, whether it's work, whether it's romantic relationships, friendships, it strikes at the heart of a man. And so these men are actually in terrible pain. They're in terrible pain, and they're numb to it. They're numb to it, and oftentimes they're compulsive. The thing with nice guys is that there's usually some kind of sexual problem, right? It could be pornography addiction, something like that. But there's some problem sexually, okay? And that was something that Dr. Glover identified, was that usually nice guys had some kind of sexual problem, because this is actually a sexual wounding. This is actually a wounding to the very essence of what a man is. And the result is this lapdog, right? The wolf gets repressed or killed completely, and what's left is a lapdog. And this is what I hear a lot of women complaining about. They're complaining that there are a lot of adult boys out there, that these men have no charge. There's no tension. There's no balls. These men have no balls, right? They don't want to offend a woman. They don't want to see her cry. They don't want to see her upset. They're terrified of that. These men are absolutely terrified of that. When a woman has encountered a nice guy, and when she rejects that nice guy, that's when she sees just how nice he is not. Right? These nice guys are anything but nice, and it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage and fortitude to be able to be honest with yourself and emerge from the self-deception and admit that you have a problem with this nice guy syndrome. This nice guy syndrome is pervasive. It is everywhere in Western culture right now. Okay, and it affects everything in terms of how these men look at themselves, how these men look at the world. They are getting their cues from outside of themselves. They're getting their cues from what other people think, from what other people say, from what society is telling them. So they are being defined by the outside in. That is a man who is engulfed by mother. that is a man who is still a boy. He's being defined by outside of himself. His instincts are not online. Okay? He doesn't want to risk offending anybody or being criticized or being rejected because he's already rejected himself, right? And these are men who are not fundamentally trustworthy. These are men who are not trustworthy, especially around other men. Other men won't tolerate these guys because they are not honest with themselves, and you can feel it. You can feel a man whose instinct is not there. You can feel a man who is not honest. And these men, I would say, are also very dangerous to women because they are the sort of, hey, I'm a friend, I'm a friend, I'm a friend, I'm a friend, pounce, right? You ask just about any woman, and she'll tell you she's encountered a man like that. So, nice guy syndrome is a state of unhealth. That's the fundamental takeaway from this, is that the nice guy syndrome is a state of unhealth. It is a state where you're going to be miserable. You're not going to feel in your power. The chances are you're going to have money issues. The chances are you're going to have sexual issues. And the chances are you are going to have unsatisfying romantic relationships. So if you've heard this, if you've heard what I've shared with you today and it resonates for you, drop me a comment. Let me know what you're dealing with. You can improve things from nice guy syndrome, but you've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to do the work. Okay? It's not going to come from reading a book or, like I say, doing a master class. This is a very, very deep wound. It's a very deep wound, not only with your mother, but with your father. Okay? And it reaches to the very core of who and what you are as a masculine creature. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.